Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, along with Sarah.
Hello.
And hopefully all of you, hopefully we're all live together and everything's going well. This morning has gone way too smoothly, so I'm thinking that I'm
Don't say that too loud. Don't say that too loud.
Bound for something to happen. We are going to paint a rusty old truck, and I have all of the information you're going to need for this, either in the video description, or I also have a picture of my color chart and a downloadable PDF drawing that you can transfer onto your watercolor paper if you want, and there's a link in the video description to the reference photo, so you can open that up on your computer or print it out and look at it while you're painting. It will make it a little bit easier for you. We are going to be using some neutral colors, and I know a lot of times when you're using warm watercolors that tend to be granular, be a little bit semi-transparent instead of fully transparent, you have the tendency to make mud. So we're going to work with these colors, and I'll show you how not to make mud. The colors I'm using are from our sponsor, Jerry's Artorama. Well, actually, I bought them, but they sell them. They are the Lucas 1862 watercolors, and I will be using yellow ochre. My primaries will be yellow ochre for my yellow, cad red deep for my red, which is just, you can use a warm red like a pyrrole red if you don't have cad red deep, or vermilion, something that's nice and warm. You will want ultramarine blue, because ultramarine blue is our most granulating color, and that's going to help us get that texture of the rust that we're going to need. And I also added burnt sienna. Now I want to tell you, this is an optional color. You can mix this hue using yellow ochre and cadmium red and a little bit of ultramarine. You can see I mixed it right there. Now, the reason why you might not want to just mix all of your brown is because if you look at this swatch here, you're going to see that there's a lot more character in that brown because it is a single pigment. By mixing these three colors, I've got a color with three pigments, and that just kind of cuts down on the luminosity and the vibrancy of a color. And when you are mixing from a kind of a neutral, warm palette, it's very easy to get mud. So while you can mix that, you're going to have a more rich and vibrant painting if you do add the burnt sienna, and it's a little more convenient because you won't have to stop and mix that color. The other color I suggest is olive green. If you don't have olive green, you can use sap green, or you can mix your PG36 with pigment orange 36 or a warm yellow. So you can mix that color if you want. That's a convenience color, but it works really well when mixed with the blue for a nice cool granulated green, or with the that's with the yellow ochre for a really warm fresh green, or with the cadmium red for a rosy brown. So we're going to be using all of these different colors in different combinations. So if you have any questions, I feel like I've been talking nonstop here.
That's fine.
That's okay. If you have any questions, just go ahead and type the word question in all caps. If it's something that I need to answer, Sarah will ask it to me. If not, the moderators will hop in and help you out. I forgot to put the paper size down. I apologize. This is 7.5 by 11 inches. It is 1/8 of a full-size sheet, and this is the Langton Prestige that I just ordered on Jerry's Overstock sale. And don't worry, I left some things. I did not buy all the things. After seeing my haul video this week, you may think I bought all the things, but they still have plenty of things to buy. Oh my word. I got to stop. I don't have any more room. We're not going to be able to have the dog over anymore because she won't be able to walk into my office.
I know, right? She'll have to stay in the Jeep. She won't be able to come in.
Oh, how sad is that? All right, so let's start out by making some puddles of paint on our paper. You can use whatever brush you want. I think for mixing, I don't like to use my synthetic squirrels just because they are a little soft, so I'll use my synthetic faux Kolinsky brush here. I'm going to put out a nice big puddle of cad red, and cadmium colors tend to be opaque. So I think that's when people end up getting mud, is when they're mixing their more opaque colors. So you just want to be aware of that. So I got the cad red there. We're going to do some yellow ochre. And you can spritz your palette with a little water first if you need to. And it doesn't matter what brand of paint you use. The pigments are usually the same. And especially, the one that I'm really concerned that you have is ultramarine. And it can be French ultramarine, it can be ultramarine light, it can be ultramarine deep. I'm using ultramarine deep, but it's all the same pigment. And there's very small differences between the two. Somebody just asked me what's the difference between ultramarine light and ultramarine deep. And I would just say maybe use ultramarine light if you're trying to get the look of cobalt blue, but you don't have it or you don't want it. That would be one of the reasons. But it really doesn't matter for this. You can use either one. This is the burnt sienna. This is PBR7, not the PR101 burnt sienna, but I honestly think you could use either one. I don't think it would be that big of a difference. But if you want the same pigment, PBR7 is also the pigment for burnt umber. So just go with whichever one you have that looks closer to what I'm using here. That's the main thing there. So we'll be able to mix all the same colors pretty much. And there's our olive green. And this olive green looks like some company's sap green. So just go with the one you have. I would avoid chrome oxide green. It's my least favorite watercolor. It's not a horrible color. There's ways to use it, but with all of these other heavy pigments that we have here, it's going to be mud. So we want to make sure we don't use that color. Now the reference photo does not have any sky in it, but I do want to have some sky. So I am going to start off with one of my favorite brushes. It is my number 30 synthetic squirrel.
Unlike the one that you have stuck in your bun.
Yeah, not the brush in my bun. Yeah, I just washed my hair today. It was a little unruly, so I stuck a paintbrush in there. Keep it under control. I'm just wetting the sky. Now this is a 100% cotton paper that I'm using, a Langton Prestige, so it is a little more absorbent than a cellulose paper. Well, some people ask me, can I use the good paper? Can I use cotton paper if I only have student watercolors? Absolutely. And you can use student paper if you're using good, like artist quality watercolors. It really does not matter all that much. I am going to bring the water down even further than where I want the sky, so I don't have any weird hard edges. I am painting around the truck though, because I really don't want to add any color to that quite yet. And I want to, you can see kind of through the truck into the background through those windows. So I just want to get a little bit of water in there too.
Sue Thomas, can you tell me what is the cheapest watercolor with the most pigments?
This Lucas 1862 is pretty pigmented and about a quarter to half of the price of what you would pay for other brands. So I think that would probably be your best bet. Now I've taken a little bit of the burnt sienna into my ultramarine blue, and look how it's made it a little more gray. I think that's a really nice sky color here. Just gonna put some of that in there and let it kind of blend around. Now the more water you use in your wash, the more granulation you're going to get. And granulation is this this kind of texturing that happens when the pigment settles out from the water and kind of separates and dries, and it's a really pretty look, and I love it in skies. And a lot of people have been asking about granulation lately, so I just want to make sure that you kind of know what I'm talking about when I say that, because it's a beautiful effect. Because people were thinking, should I not have granular colors? Do I want to not buy something that granulates? I think it's a beautiful effect, and certain colors do it very well, such as ultramarine. And just by, you know, adding some of those colors to your mixes, you'll get that beautiful granulation.
Huma Hader, would you recommend a French box easel for watercolor? If yes, then which one?
You know what, I would, because you can fold it completely flat. Like you can be standing up outside painting and you can fold it completely flat and still keep your painting board on your easel, which I think is really, really handy for watercolor. You can also tip it towards yourself if you want to do pastels, so the dust falls on the ground and doesn't fall across your painting. I would say if you could only have one easel, especially if you're limited on space and you have to kind of like you're painting in your living room or something and you don't have a dedicated space, a French easel is a great one to have. I only have one. I'm not even sure what brand it is because you can't read the brand from there. Can you on my French easel? It's leaning against it.
Gosh, no.
I've had it for probably 20 years, and I don't even know if the brand still is out there, but Sarah's gonna read on it and see what it says. I'm just gonna take some of that olive green.
Studio ready to assemble, inspiring creativity.
Oh, that sounds like a generic French easel. So Julian is a company that makes is probably the kind of inventor or the most famous maker of French easels, so that would be a good bet. If anybody has one of a different brand that wants to chime in the chat, because I've only had that one. That's all I've used. So.
Oh God, as I've just broken it.
No, you haven't.
No,
you just.
I know. I just got it. There we go. Okay. Whew, all right, I'm gonna sit back down where it's
Thank you for checking. Yeah, and they're not very expensive. It used to be they would retail for about $300, but it seems like I've seen them on Jerry's for about $80 or so. I would recommend a full size instead of the half box, because you can hold twice as much stuff in there, unless you can't like lift the full size ones. They're not super light. They are a little, you know, hefty when you're taking them out to paint in the field, but they're really nice. All right, I want to cool down the screen a little bit. I'm going to do some olive green with some ultramarine blue. And this is all stuff in the distance, so it's totally fine that it's blending together. Somebody had said they changed the, some companies have changed what they make their easels out of. Mine is beech, but some I guess are made from elm, and maybe the elm, and they said the elm ones were, the wing nuts were like digging into the wood, so maybe look for a beech wood. I mean, it's kind of tricky because they want to use a wood that's not going to be heavy to carry, but it also has to be durable, and you know, softer woods are lighter, but they tend not to be as durable. Now I want to brighten up this lawn area behind the truck, and I'm going to go with the olive green with a little bit of yellow ochre in it. If you are mixing with a big juicy brush like this, it helps to blot it on a paper towel so you don't get too much water in your mix.
BKBRP64, why don't you tape all around the border like you used to?
I do sometimes, but to be honest, I probably should have grabbed a bigger piece of paper to do this on, and so I didn't have enough background. I didn't want to lose a little spot of it because I went a little close, excuse me, too close to the edge. I should have grabbed a larger sheet of paper and given myself a little more background, but that's the only reason, because I don't have the space to tape it down on this particular one. As your paper dries, you'll start to see some of your pigments separating out. You can even go in with some yellow ochre on its own. So when you want a color to granulate, if it's a granulating color, just make sure that you have more water. You want a really wet wash to get the maximum granulation effect. If you don't want your color to granulate, then don't add a lot of water. You need that water for the particles to float and then settle, and that's why you get the granulating effect. Now, I didn't wet the bottom of the paper because I want to have a little control, because I do have some shadows happening in here. I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to grab some burnt sienna and some yellow ochre.
Tanya Miller, have you used Royal Langnickel watercolors in tubes? I bought some last week, but have not used them yet.
Yes, I have. They're a student grade watercolor. They're kind of, actually, I keep a bunch of those on hand when I am teaching, because the tubes are actually pretty good size, and I keep them in my teaching bag. If somebody runs out of a color, I go ahead and fill it up. The only thing, if you let them dry in your palette, because they are available in pans too. I like the pans a little bit more because they kind of stay concentrated in their palette. If you squeeze the tubes out into your palette, they will crack and want to fall out. So you want to mix a little bit of honey or glycerin into them, and that will prevent them from drying and cracking out in your palette. So they'll stay kind of adhered into your palette a little bit better. But yeah, they're a good paint to learn on. And I use them in my classes quite a bit.
Rhonda McGee, who is your favorite of the old master watercolorist?
Oh boy. Well, I really like the work. This is good, and he's extremely abstract. John Marin, who's does a lot of I don't know if you call them seascapes. They're very abstract, and he's a New England painter. He painted a lot in Maine, but I think he's from New York. I hope I'm getting that right. But he had very, very abstract watercolors. It reminded me of Moreau quite a bit. I think he's a French painter. But it was just very, very joyful, abstract seascapes.
Jeannie GS1, I have raw sienna in my palette. Can I add something to that to get burnt sienna? Will I still lose the luminosity you spoke of from mixing?
Raw sienna is going to look probably going to look a little bit more, unless you have PBR7. Sometimes your raw sienna is a mixture of the yellow ochre pigment PY43 and PR101. So if it's that, I wouldn't use that because your yellow ochre is going to be very similar. I think if it looks about the same, you're going to be fine as long as it's not the pigment PY42 or PY43, because then you already have that in your yellow ochre. If it's PBR7, go ahead. If it doesn't seem like it's dark enough, you can add a little ultramarine blue to it in the areas you want it a little darker. Okay, now while that's drying, I think I'm going to work, I'm going to mix up some of the color for the truck. And I'm going to be making a couple different mixes here. I'm going to do the red on its own. I'm going to have the red and burnt sienna. I'm going to do the red and ultramarine, which will give me the rusty granular effect because it's got the ultramarine in it. And let me just grab some burnt sienna on its own because I'm just about out. Let's stick it there. And if I need to, I'll drop some yellow ochre in fresh from the pan. I'm going to dry this a bit, and then I will take your questions while I'm drying it. So if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat, because I'm just afraid if I go in at this point with any of my reds, they're just going to wick out into the background. And I really need a crisp line on the edge of the truck here.
Step 13, is it better to start with the background or the image itself?
It completely matters it depends on the subject that you're painting and what you prefer. Some people save the backgrounds for the end. I usually like to start with the backgrounds, or I start with a wash that incorporates the entire painting, because I don't like staring at that white background, and I usually prefer my paintings to have backgrounds. And plus, I find when I start with a background, I'm working much looser and freer, and it helps me kind of relax before I start painting. If I start right in with my detailed foreground image, I'm a little bit more nervous and afraid of messing it up. So I find, for me, it's a better method to do backgrounds first, or do a unifying wash over the entire thing. But it completely is up to you. If you're not sure if you want a background, like we did with our moth last week, we painted the foreground first. You can totally do it that way if you're not sure. That's about the only time I do my backgrounds last, is if I'm not sure if I want one or not.
Gracie Shack, what do you think of the dollar Rowney paints? Are they worth buying?
Let's see. I've used the Aquafine. They're a student grade paint. They're decent for what they are. I've never used their artist paint, so I can't tell you for that if they're worth it or not. I like this little heat tool. It's so quiet.
It is very quiet. Azalea P, what is the main difference between watercolor and gouache?
Opacity. Gouache has opacifiers in it, or is made from opaque pigments only. But like a white watercolor, like Chinese white, PW4 is not as opaque as the gouache titanium white. So even your most opaque watercolors that are sold as watercolors will be more transparent than a gouache. But that's a big difference. I mean, gouache can be less light fast because of the additional opacifiers they add in, because it spreads out those pigments sometimes. But there are companies that make a light fast gouache. So yeah, that's a big difference. I mean, it's the same. It's kind of the same animals, just one's opaque and one's transparent. Okay, I'm using a number 8 round, and I am going to start with a controlled wash on the truck. And I think I'm going to start off. I'm going to grab a little yellow ochre on my brush, actually, because I see the top of the truck is a little rusty and weathered. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that kind of brown mix that was the burnt sienna with a little bit of red in it. It was just kind of on the dirty palette there. I'm working on a board so I can tip my painting a little bit, and I'm going to add a little water into this because I don't have very much. I don't have any water on the paper right now. So to do a controlled wash, you're going to find the edge you want to start on, And you are going to make a bead of paint. So you do need a fairly steady hand for this. If you do not have a very steady hand, you may be better off just to paint this area in with water and add the pigment to it like we did in the background, just because this can be, this is a little bit more of an advanced skill. I would say give it a try, but if you're worried about messing up your painting, you could always try it on a scrap. So the reason you might want to do this is if you don't want to introduce too much water into a design, you get a much more level coating of paint. There's going to be a little less granulation here because you're not working quite as wet, but you're able to control your strokes. You're not going to have as much color shift because your paper's not as wet.
Azalea P, do you stretch all of your paper before painting?
I rarely stretch paper. As you can see here, I've just taped the 4 corners down and that's all.
Gina Shepard, can you suggest a strong opaque watercolor set?
The Lucas gouache is very opaque, and that was on sale for like $6.99 at Jerry's. If you just go to, let's see, I think it's in the Lucas Studio listing, but just type in the search Lucas gouache. I think it's a set of 10, and it's I really like it. I've been using it a lot lately, and it was like $6.99. That's a great set. It's in tubes. You can squeeze it into a palette and let it dry if you want to. I would squeeze out a little bit more than what you're going to use, and you can keep spraying your palette to make it wet. But I don't necessarily recommend squeezing out a ton of your gouache before you can use it, because it is a little bit more difficult to reconstitute, and it does have a tendency to crack in the pans. And you don't really want to add glycerin to it because it can dilute it, I think. So I think I would just kind of keep your palette damp as you're working on it, and you can keep working on it until you've used it up, but I wouldn't put in way more than you're going to need for a painting. All right, and I'm switching. I'm kind of like picking up different colors as I go because the paint is very uneven on this truck.
Tom Store, I know this truck is old, but how would you paint a chrome color without glitter?
You have to, it's great if you get a reference photo because it's a reflective surface and it's going to change, but you want to look at where your white is. You want to look at where your gray is. You want to look at where your black is. You have to look at all the things that are surrounding your item in chrome that is being reflected on the chrome. So if there's grass or stones or dirt, you're going to have all of those colors reflected in the chrome. You're going to have the blue of the sky if it's shiny chrome. So you have to, it's not so much you're painting the chrome, you're painting everything that the chrome is reflecting. So you need to paint, excuse me, in layers, and you need to paint on dry. You need to let the layers dry in between so you keep those sharp edges. I'm going to grab a little bit of burnt sienna here because we've got a little bit more rusty area. Going right over that windshield wiper there. And that's why we pulled out our colors when we began, because you don't want to stop and be mixing as you're doing this controlled wash, because you want to be working against that wet edge. And that's what's going to give you, that's what's going to keep it from backwashing and blooming on you.
BKBRP 64, I hear you mentioning pigment numbers in your tutorials. Are these pigments common amongst all watercolor paints brands?
Yes, generally they are, but sometimes brands get clever and they decide they're going to give, the name of their paint, like, Bluebell Blue, or they're going to call it some Summer Sky, or, something fancy that you're like, well, what is this? Is this ultramarine? Is this Prussian blue? So that's why I give you the pigment numbers as well, so that you can look at your tube of paint and see, what the color actually is, so that you can pick the appropriate color of what you have. It's kind of like an ingredients label. Well, all artist watercolors should have the pigment number. A lot of student colors do too, but some don't. But if you kind of don't trust what your eyes tell you when you're looking at a color, it's really helpful to know the pigment number.
Cassandra Gilbert, can you add glycerin to already dried paint?
You can. I would put a drop on top and then give it some spritzes of water. Maybe try to like mix it in a little bit with a stiff brush. But it will keep what it's going to do is it's going to keep your paint moist so that you can, it'll re-wet easier, and it'll kind of help glue it into the pan too. Now, since these are fairly opaque, transparent watercolors, and the pigment particles are fairly large, they're going to lift up from your paper if you make a mistake. So that's another good thing about this. If you need to highlight somewhere, we'll be able to lift it out. And I'm just kind of looking at my reference photo, which is linked in the video description. And I am kind of working my way around the car or truck, and then just kind of putting in the colors as I see them. I'm not cleaning my brush in between colors because this was all painted one color at one point. So these colors should mix and mingle and be kind of related. I see something really light, like a highlight, or maybe like something that's going to be just a gray metal, bare metal, then I will leave a spot there so I can paint it with my mix of ultramarine and burnt sienna later after it's dry. So I'm just trying to go ahead and get the just the red and rusty parts right now.
The Impatient Painter, what are your opinions on the Leningrad White Night watercolors?
You know, I like them. I think the earth tones are a little weak, but when I compare my swatches of those compared to my other artist watercolors, I actually found them to be very similar to Winsor & Newton professional artist watercolors. So I have no qualms with that brand whatsoever, and they're very affordable. So I'd say go for it. The pigments look pretty good. I mean, there's a couple pigments that are a little iffy. I think with the pigment they use for violet, that looks like a dioxazine violet. I think they have one that it looks like a dioxazine, but it's a different violet pigment, and it's not as light fast. So watch out for that one. Watch out for Russian green, which is a beautiful green, but it's potentially not a light fast green. It's an odd pigment. But most of them are pretty good pigments and should do you pretty well. And I haven't had any experience with anything of mine fading either, because I've used, because Yarka, White Nights, they're all the same paint. It's just different trade names for the same brand. They just use different names depending on where they're marketing it. So I've been using Yarka for years, and I haven't had any issues with anything fading.
Deborah Sullivan, do you have a watercolor secret to achieving beautiful luminosity every time?
I think the secret is just being aware of what you're mixing with and not using too many colors to make a mix, because that's where you kind of end up with mud. And just kind of learning color theory. That's what's going to give you your luminous color.
The Malik, what is a good source or chart that lists pigment numbers of the paint?
Never found one, actually. If you can find like a brochure sometimes in an art store for a line of paints, you can see, like Daniel Smith has a pretty good one. I don't know if you have to write them for it. It might be on their website, but it has all their, I have a brochure. I think they sent it to me because there was actually 2 French ultramarines and a set of paints that I bought. And so they sent me out the one that was missing and a lovely chart. And that had all of the pigment numbers, whether it was semi-transparent or transparent. And since they have such a huge range, it would probably be pretty inclusive of all the pigments that you would run into. I decided I would wet this hubcap because it's a little bit lighter, and then put my color right into it. And that was pretty good. There's something called the color index, but you have to subscribe and pay money to see that. What are y'all laughing about?
I subscribe. That's silly, I guess. I don't know.
Pay money.
Pay money? What is this? What?
But I think it's meant for more like the professional industry of like color mixing, and I think it's more of like a materials coloring. I think it's more of a trade thing than an average Joe thing, you know? Yeah. There's also a website, but it's a little, and I've mentioned it before, it's a great website, but it's a little like mind-numbingly information packed. It's called Handprint, and there's a lot of pigment information there. And if you're wondering if a paint that you have if the pigment is a good pigment, if it's a pigment you can trust, you can look up that pigment there, and it'll tell you whether the pigment is light fast or not, the different brands of paint that use that pigment, and what the website owner thinks about the pigment. He's I don't know, it seems a little crusty actually. He's just I don't know, he's very particular, and
what's wrong with crusty? Some of us are crusty sitting here in this room. Like me.
Yeah, but you don't hate on my watercolor paint. You don't hate on my brands of paint. I mean, he hates on some paint sometimes.
I try not to hate on anything, and if I do it quietly by myself.
Oh, that's good.
Bastet 469, my Lucas gouache and 1862 watercolor tubes sat out all night at 19 degrees Fahrenheit. Should I return them?
No, watercolor will be fine. If it was acrylics, I would say you want
SOL.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't order acrylics in the winter.
They were frozen solid when I found the box.
No, watercolors are fine. But if you have if you had any acrylics or glues, they're not going to be any good.
Azalea P, do you use black for shadow or mix your own color?
Mix my own color unless I'm doing something that I specifically want. I specifically want that almost cartoony or whimsical look to. Like I want more of a graphic art look to it. Then I will go ahead and use black. It's not a very common occurrence for me. But sometimes I find it to be a useful design tool. But I find that if you're trying to paint something that you want to be natural looking, then avoiding black is the easiest way to do that.
Derek Marshall, are there certain tube watercolors that should not be let to dry in the pan? I have some that look grainy now.
Well, I've heard that like the Daniel Smith Permatex are best if you don't let them dry in the pan because they're tougher to re-wet, but it really shouldn't hurt them. I mean, it just might be a little annoying just re-wetting them for you, but I don't think it would really hurt anything. And they might look a little grainy in the pan. And Winsor Newton will say, don't let their paints dry in the pan, squish out free new paint every time, but I think we all know why they suggest that. Guess who's not sponsoring my next video? But no, it really shouldn't hurt anything.
No, they say it so you have the best painting experience possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Ian Jackson, you can add honey to watercolors as a binder, so can you add syrup?
Syrup?
I'm assuming like maple
corn syrup?
or I would say no, because that's sugar.
Yeah,
sugar.
I wouldn't, because honey is a natural preservative.
And antibacterial
and
antifungal properties.
Yeah, it's like the only thing that doesn't spoil, isn't it?
Ian, buy the honey, you'll be fine.
Or buy glycerin,
Buy honey, because then you can put it in your tea. Or at least I do. I know you don't do honey.
I actually heard a really interesting tip that somebody shared with me on my blog. She says that she gets glycerin by the gallons at Tractor Supply Company.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah, because I usually go to like the health food store and a little like 8-ounce bottle is like $16.
Well, yeah, because it came from some organic farm somewhere.
With happy vegetables. I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, for like art purposes, soap making and stuff, I mean, I'm sure they use it for like probably for moisturizing leather and moisturizing the animals, probably like rubbing on udders. I don't know what they use glycerin for, and I'm not a farmer, but they probably use it for something like that, I would imagine.
Something important. I don't know. Anyone here a farmer that can answer that? I'm a little behind in chat. I'll get to you as soon as I can.
I'm going to mix a nice little gray, and I'm going to use the burnt, oops, that's not right here, burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Wonderful gray, wonderful mix. Some people pre-mix it in their palettes. I don't like to do that. I like to mix it up fresh when I want it because it's an easy color to mix. They're very liftable colors, but if it's something that you use all the time and you want to mix it in equal portions in your palette, you certainly can.
Doodle Sam, is it a good idea to buy some basic colors from Schminky and mix them with Cotman?
It wouldn't hurt anything. Yeah, you can mix any of them, whatever brand you want to try. I would get different colors than you have, unless you're like, oh, I'm almost out of, sap green. I love this color. I think I want to buy it in an artist's, color. I would take a look at the pigment numbers. If you're trying to like get the same color in Schminka, and just make sure it is the same pigment. because sometimes they use different pigments and sometimes they use different pigments unusually. So you just might want to make sure that you're getting the color you think you're getting. But it won't hurt anything to mix any artist and student watercolors together.
We have someone asking about tutorials on swatching. Do you have any tutorials on swatching?
Oh gosh, I'm sure I know I've swatched
I think
stuff.
You do.
I've
I think
stuff.
you did some swatching tutorials. So check.
Look in the reviews. There's a playlist that's product info and reviews.
Yeah, BKBRP64. Check in the video archive. I think you've done at least one.
Yeah, I think
because I seem to remember you were getting a lot of questions about swatching.
Yeah.
And like color mixing.
Yeah, I think that if you look in the product info and reviews, you'll see some swatching being done. I usually swatch off camera now because it's kind of can be kind of boring to watch if you've watching paint dry. I'm adding a little yellow ochre and some of that gray mix that I just had onto the tire just so I have something when I paint some tread on there. Something to show up. I can lay it flat now, actually.
Carol Kager, what is your very favorite brush, paint, and paper with no money, no object, no objection? No money, no object.
Probably my favorite paper would be Arches. And I like rough and I like cold press. I don't use hot press all that often. So, it just depends on what kind of mood I'm in and what I'm going to paint, what my subject is. And for paints, oh gosh, there's so many really good ones. I'm still a huge fan of M. Graham. And I also like the Daniel Smith colors that I've tried. But I mean, I'd probably still say M. Graham. They're not the most expensive paint, but I think they're the best. And they're American made paint too. So is Daniel Smith, actually, for that matter. Oh, so many good ones. So it's like trying to pick your favorite movie.
Yeah, that's not easy.
No. I'm adding just little touches of color. Any place I know I'm going to have to put darker shadows on top, I'm just keeping these really pale washes so that I've got something underneath. And if I know I want more texture, I'm just making sure that it's really wet so that those colors will granulate and separate and give me the look that I'm after. So this is all kind of brown and rusty back there. So we're going to mix. We're going to do that same gray mix, but we're going to do more burnt sienna. And we're going to do a little bit of ultramarine. I kind of tap it off to the side and just mix in what's on my brush if I'm not sure how much I need. And let's start. This seems like it might be pretty dark, so I'm just going to kind of start in this darker area. Get some of these darker areas in. We will need to go and put in crisper darks. And I like to jump around to different parts of the picture as I'm working. I mean, you could do all this door and everything at once. I just like to jump around because I find that it helps me keep my values more accurate when I do that. You could go in whatever order you want to, though, unless you've got a wet area that you're letting dry for whatever reason.
Cassandra Gilbert, is it better to work dry from a pan or put drops of wet watercolor on a palette?
I prefer to work dry from a pan or from a dried palette, but it's personal preference. There's no better or worse. I find you waste a lot less, and I think it's a little easier to control, like how much paint you're getting. But I'm used to painting from a dry palette because that's the way I was instructed to when I was a kid. So that works best for me, but it doesn't mean it works best for everybody. That would be my recommendation.
Azalea P, have you tried the Daniel Smith watercolor ground?
Yes, I like it. Yes, I have. I was just trying to think what brand is the one that I have because I know there's also Core, but yeah, it was a Daniel Smith. I like it. The thing you need to be concerned with that, not really concerned, but just be aware of, your colors are. It almost is like it feels like it almost eats your color because everything dries so much lighter. There's a huge shift between wet to dry. I'm not sure why, but that's what I've noticed with that particular product. But I like it. I painted blueberries on a little gift tin It's on my channel if you do want to see it in action. And you'll see what I mean about the color shift. It was the first time I used it, and I was really surprised.
Anita Marin, do you have some information about light and heavy pigments and how they work together?
Well, now this isn't scientific or anything, but when you have heavy pigments and they are bigger pigments, the pigment particles themselves are larger. They're not absorbing into the paper. They're kind of sitting on top. So light is reflecting off of the pigment versus reflecting off of the, rather than traveling through the pigment, bouncing off the white of the paper and reflecting back through the pigment again. So that's why these colors are not as vibrant. They tend to be more light fast, less resistant to fading, and but that's kind of the big thing, is that they're going to bounce, the light's going to bounce off of the pigment surface versus traveling through the veil of pigment and bouncing off the paper.
Paul Adams says that glycerin is used in lots of cattle feed.
Oh, that makes sense. Probably keep it from drying out, maybe. I'm dabbing in some yellow ochre, and that's just going to give me some of those kind of warmer, rustier areas. And I'm going to go ahead and grab some of that mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and dab a little bit of that in there too. That will give me some texture. So I'll get some granulation and some nice, I might even get some blooms in there, which would look like a bit of rust.
Nikki C. Glycerin on a farm can be used for moisturizing animals and pest control in gardens.
Oh, good to know.
So yeah, okay, that's why they buy them.
Yeah, I thought it was probably because, I mean, glycerin is an excellent moisturizer. You use it in soap and lotions, and you can use it on your rubber stamps to keep the rubber from drying out, and it doesn't hurt them like an oil would rot the rubber. Glycerin will moisturize it but not affect the rubber.
Olivia W. I'm painting on Fabriano Studio, and when I wet the paper, the water evaporates so fast I have to re-wet the area.
You might want to keep a little fine spray bottle and just spritz it so you don't have to re-wet. Sometimes, even on arches, I've had to wet it and re-wet it because it so much absorbs in. So I think it's probably because of the 25% cotton content of the Fabriano Studio. That might be a little different than what you're used to using.
Also, with winter time, more people have like heat sources on, which makes the air drier. So that might be affecting it too.
For the shadow mix, our darkest value, we're going to take the cadmium red and we are going to mix it with ultramarine blue. And that's because the cadmium red is so orange based, it almost wants to be be orange against the blue. The blue and orange are opposites, so they kind of negate each other. But because they're more pigmented, it's such a dark color, strong pigment, you get a really nice, almost black rather than getting a purple. So that's why we're not getting a purple when we mix these two. The yellow undertones of the red are canceling that out. Getting almost a black color here with like a purpley undertone.
Doodle Sam, what is a good light fast alternative to Alzerian Crimson?
Permanent is alizarin crimson. So as long as you got the permanent one, you're good. It's the PR83 that is the problem. So just avoid alizarin crimson with that pigment. And you'll be good. Most colors, most companies use a permanent alizarin crimson. I mean, they still make it because people still want it, because that's what, you know, the old masters painted with, so they want to buy it because they think it's, if they painted with it, it must be best. But there's been some wonderful modern technology that has made better paint, in my opinion. Yeah, that's a funny color too. When it fades, it's like it seems just fine, and then all of a sudden it's gone. It's like there's there's no graduation. It's like it's there, it's not.
BKBRP64, could you show us when you're blotting on the paper towel? I'm assuming they mean your brush.
Oh, sure.
Retha Off-Grid, do you make print copies of your pictures to sell? If so, what print company do you use?
That's funny. It's something I've been thinking about doing, but I'm thinking about investing in the equipment to do it at home archivally. So I have not had fine art prints made.
Bev Roberts, do you like the Daniel Smith watercolor ground for correcting mistakes in a painting?
Mistakes? So who do you think I am, making mistakes in a painting? Mistakes. What's a mistake? What do you take me for?
What?
Gosh, you should work just fine for that. I don't know if I've used it for that, or I don't think I've used it for that. I make a mistake in a watercolor, it becomes a mixed media piece. You can see how you get a really nice flat wash there just by having your brush loaded with paint, going on dry paper and working an area, just keeping that edge wet as you work. You don't get weird backgrounds. You get a nice matte, dark, solid area of color. There's also like a whiteout too. It's called like Aqua Cover, and it's a it's basically a whiteout for watercolor paper. As long as I keep this same edge wet, as long as I don't go back into that wash, I'm going to get a nice smooth color in here. If you have any paint left over on your paper when you're done, I can see a tiny puddle. You're going to blot your brush off, soak up, like dry off that brush. And then you're going to put that brush back in, kind of tip your paper so it all collects the bottom, and put your brush in there and just soak up any extra color. You don't want to go in with a paper towel because you pull too much off. You just want to take any excess out so it's going to dry evenly. That's when you get blotchy washes, is when it's not drying evenly. And then you get those blooms and those lines and blotches and stuff. We're going to do that same technique under the truck. We're going to get the kind of darker areas in there. We are going to do a little mixing. I'm going to start off with this color here. It's those same two colors, but lighter. And I'm going to start up here where there's a little bit more light coming in. I'm working on dry paper.
Melissa Eldasari, I'm getting a delivery tomorrow of the Lucas 1862 watercolors. You mentioned in your review that they could use some glycerin or honey. Should I add a drop to the pans and let it absorb?
No, that's what I'm using. No, I wouldn't bother. I would say if you, she said the pans, right? The set of pans?
She didn't say whether she got pans or tubes. She
just
said she ordered the Lucas.
Well, it won't hurt anything if you do. So go ahead if you want to. It's not going to hurt anything. I didn't add anything to my pans, but if you did want like an increased luminosity to them, you could add some honey. I would just mix it off to the side and use it on that painting, or maybe put it in your just put it in like a little dish that you can dip into with some water or something. But I wouldn't add it right to the palette. I don't think it's necessary to do that.
Doodle Sam, how long will it take for your pans to dry when you refill them?
It really depends on your climate and what kind of paint you're refilling it with. M. Graham takes a lot longer to dry than like Core. Core dries fairly quickly. It just depends. Sennelier might take a little bit longer than some brands because of the honey that's in it. I'm going to grab a little bit of it, but it can be anywhere from like overnight to 2 weeks. So there's a range. I'm going to make some more of the nice neutral gray with the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. We're going to use some of that in the bottom shadow of the truck as well. And on our tires here. And I want my darks to be interesting, so I will alternate what mix I dip my brush into, just so I have nice, fresh, interesting looking darks. I think it's kind of nice if, like, when you transfer your design, don't worry about being too perfect with this truck, because if you have a little wonky line here or there, I mean, or a dent or a ding, it's just going to make the vehicle look a little bit more realistic. So perfection would ruin the effect. Oh my, does this say 383 people?
382 people. We've had almost 400.
Holy
We've been hovering
cow.
around 350 or more.
Oh, guys, wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Not only do you hit over 300,000 subscribers, now you're averaging almost 400 viewers a video.
Whoa. That's pretty cool. You guys all slacking off at work or something today?
Yeah, 3-day weekend. Woo!
It's starting early.
Gordana Nikolic, could I use Neo Color 1 and or 2 as an underpainting for colored pencils?
You could use Neo Color 2 if you added a lot of water to it, because it's Neo Color 2 is a water soluble. If you broke down that wax enough, then you could. If you used it thickly, the colored pencil isn't going to stick. If you have watercolors, they're an excellent underpainting for a colored pencil. Now I've got this shadow that's actually on the ground here, and instead of going in and painting it like I was on the metallic parts under the truck, I'm actually gonna go ahead and add water where I want my shadow to be. And again, I highly encourage you to have that reference photo printed out or open on your computer so you can see what you're trying to achieve here. If you're watching the replay of the video, you can download it and open it up in like a corner of your screen, you know, have the tutorial not full screen so you can kind of see both. And I think that would be really helpful, because what I'm doing here is I'm just wetting the area where there's going to be lots of shadow. And for my shadow on the ground, I don't want it as red because it wouldn't be the reflection of any of the red there. It'd be mostly my ground color. So I'm doing the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue, and I want it to granulate because I want it to look kind of like there are pebbles and sand and whatnot. So I'm going ahead and I want that wet wash. That's why I didn't want to go in and paint it dry like I was on those places where I wanted the flatter color. I want to see this ground texture through the shadow, so that's why I'm doing this wet to wet wash, and I'm using a granulating color. Please don't feel frustrated if you're not getting the concept of the granulation and what pigments do that and what don't. It's something that comes with practice. It's not important that you know it yet, but when you start to mix colors and you say, oh, I love what that's doing, I wish I could replicate that, hopefully you'll remember that, oh yeah, that's a granulating color, that's why that's doing that. And then you can force that effect again sometime where you want it. So I don't want anyone to be confused. If it's just too much information, just don't pay any attention to what I'm saying. But if you feel like you're ready for that information, then there you have it.
Olivia W., is there anything wrong with not waiting fully for the watercolors to dry in pans after refilling? I'm impatient and wait until it stops getting on my finger when I press it. No,
it won't hurt anything. You just have to be a little more cautious when you're using your paint, that you don't contaminate your paint. So like sometimes I'll just I'll show you here. I'll just bring my palette over so you can see. So I'm like, I need to mix up some more of that gray. So okay, I'm gonna go grab my ultramarine. Oh, then I'm gonna grab my, you don't want to do this if your paint's wet, because you're gonna contaminate it. Here, the worst I can do is contaminate that top layer, and I can wipe it away with a wet brush. So that's, so I can kind of go back and forth like that because my pans are dry. Another reason I like working from dry pans, you'll want to wash your brush in between, rinse it real good, but you don't contaminate that, because once it's mixed into wet paint, you've altered that entire pot of color, and either you got to live with it or you have to take it out. And that's watercolor paint's expensive.
That's not frugal at all.
No, I mean, watercolor paint is probably for what you get and how much use you get out of it. It's probably just affordable paint, but not if you have to, scrape it out of your palette.
Start over.
That's not good. I feel like I've got that shadow a little thin there, so I'm just thickening that up a little bit.
Carol Kager, what is your favorite paintbrush?
You know what? This one right here, actually, I think this is my absolute favorite. Either this one or her sister, the number 12. These are the, I can use a round paintbrush for almost everything in watercolor. This is a number 8 and number 12 Mimic. It's a faux squirrel, and I just love it. And they're in a set with a bunch of other brushes that are really good size. This is another favorite one. This one right here. They're all in that set along with a few other brushes, big flats and stuff. And at Jerry's, and I think it was on sale for $29.99. I think now it's $39.99, but it's a great value. But I really like how much water they hold and how they have such a nice fine point. I usually don't, if I have to do a lot of mixing, I don't like to mix with these just because they are so soft, but very absorbent, beautiful brushes. Went my shadow area over here. Now there is a lot of light coming through in the back part, so I'm just gonna do this section right here and then work on the individual shadows afterwards.
Kelly Tanner, what's a good and inexpensive watercolor that would be good for making commission pieces?
Well, you definitely want something that's not going to fade if you're selling your work. There's a lot of good brands out there. I mean, Lucas 1862 is probably the least expensive. Turner is pretty inexpensive too. It's light fast. I feel like the Lucas is a little more pigmented though. The more that I use it, it feels like this has a little bit more pigment, but I also feel like the Turners might be a little more transparent. So if you want more of a transparent color, go with the Turner. And they have like a starter set that's like 5 milliliter tubes of 18 colors for like $30. I would try that and then replace them as you use them up with the larger tubes individually, because I think they're a little cheaper that way afterwards. But you know, if you want something that's a little bit more opaque, then go with the Lucas. Also, Da Vinci is really good. They sell really big tubes, so if you use a lot of anything, they have 35 milliliter tubes, which are like that fat and that long. They're like the size of oil paint or watercolor would come, oil paint or acrylic would come in. They're quite affordable, and I use them a lot for teaching too, because I could just set up a ton of palettes on one tube of paint, and I found the quality to be really good. It uses the same pigments that you're used to seeing in all your artists' paint. So that's Da Vinci. They also private label for other companies too. So they know what they're doing. They're a good paint brand, and they're affordable. So one of those three, I would say. Da Vinci is quite transparent too. They're a good quality. They're probably all, I don't know, probably the Turners are the cheapest. Now I'm going to work on some of the details in the tire here. I'm going to start with this really big shadow. I'm just going to freehand it in there. There's like this like hubcappy area. I guess it's not a hubcap because it doesn't look like there's anything decorative about that, but I'm going to just put this shadow kind of underneath there. If John and he could tell us all the fancy names of the parts.
He could tell you the parts. Mike could tell you exactly what type of truck that is, what it was used for, probably what year it was made, where it came from, the engine saw. I mean, he can give you a whole history. Like if you ever watch movies with Mike that have old cars in them, that's a 1943 blah 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 blah. Some kind of engine transmission that only made 600. It's amazing the information that man has stored in his brain. Retha Offgrid, can you talk about Paint My Photo site and any other reference photo sites you use?
That one is the main one. I've also purchased a membership to Graphic Stock in the past. Like if you want stock photos, they have some good ones there, but they're not necessarily designed for people to use as reference photos. So a lot of them are more commercial. So it's just kind of something to consider. But I've also used Wikimedia Commons. Do you know what? The one that's just got the photos?
No.
It's a public domain. Creative Commons or public domain images. So like photographers can post their stuff there for like, if they want to share their work and let other people use from it. They have different like a share alike thing. So if if they share it with you, then you share it with, you wouldn't use it for something you're going to charge people to have or something. I don't know. I don't really use it too often, but for public domain stuff I do. Like they'll post like the great masters pictures, and that's all public domain stuff. But Paint My Photo is the big one. I think that there's also a group on Facebook that I haven't actually taken any of the photos from, but I think it's called like Photos for Artists or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you just request to join. And they have different albums of different stuff. And there's certain rules about it. But I haven't downloaded any photos yet, so I haven't really read everything about it. But Funny Paint My Photo was like Christmas morning. I was so happy to.
You got some good stuff off there, too.
Oh my gosh, this is
really
from Paint
great.
My Photo, yeah.
Gina Shepard, how do you feel about using salt, alcohol, wax, etc. for effects in your watercolors?
I don't do it too often, but it's kind of fun. I've heard some people express concern about the longevity of a painting using salt. I think it was Nita Ingle on her blog. She had I found a post about that where she doesn't do it anymore because she's concerned about it deteriorating the painting over time. I think that if you used it and you brushed it off, you'd probably be all right. I'll use it sometimes like on a Christmas card for a snowy effect, but I see it used a lot, so I kind of tend not to use it just because I think it gets overused a little bit. So I don't personally do it too much, but it does add a really cool texture for backgrounds, especially on like mixed media pieces where I might not be concerned so much about whether it's going to last. Like if it's in my art journal, I don't expect anything in my art journal to, I don't expect to need it to last beyond my lifetime. And if it needs to, I'm sure there'll be some technology by then, like cryogenically frozen. Forget that. Have me cryogenically frozen so I can come back. Make me last. Forget about the artwork.
But would you want to?
I don't know.
All your friends and family would be gone.
Yeah, that's sad. I don't know.
And what if
Probably
the
not.
world you came back to was even more in the shitter than it already
Oh
is?
gosh, language. Oh my god.
I didn't swear. I was referencing to a household object.
Oh.
Not swearing. And I don't think I offended anybody. And if I did,
I'm sure they'll let you know.
I'm sure as I scroll down and get caught up in the chat, someone will let me know if I offended them.
I'm dabbing in some shadows here onto the bed of the vehicle, just very loosely, because that's not the main detail area of the piece. I just want to dabbing in some shadows and dropping in some of that darker shadow color. Because I think it's a great idea to paint what you know. I don't really know trucks very well, so I'm just gonna fudge it here.
Sammy Joe, I've seen the YouTube artist Mary Doodles, and she uses a lot of layers of watercolor. Have you ever done this and found it effective?
Lots of layers. I have a tutorial where I did a blue jay feather where I used a lot of glazes. I don't know if that's what they mean. Do you mean opaque layers or or glazing? Because I'm not familiar with Mary Doodles. I've heard of her name, but I actually haven't seen her stuff. What are you laughing at?
Oh, people were not offended by my word.
That's good.
They're making jokes.
Oh, good.
In fact, someone is impressed that I found a cussing loophole.
Is that Rich?
No. Pastel 469, a cussing loophole. Okay, I got distracted. I gotta go back up to where the questions are. Nikki C, how do you feel about the brushes that have a water tank?
I really like them for painting on the go, so I don't have to bother with a bucket of water. They do have a little bit of a learning curve, so I usually don't use them at home unless I'm just for convenience. I want to just color something quickly, and usually not for a painting. It's usually just on the road that I use them, but I really like them. I don't recommend them for beginners that much because I think you can get a little too much water than you're expecting, and it's one more variable and thing to worry about when you're beginning, so I don't really recommend it for a beginner. But if you really want one of those brushes, buy the brush, just don't fill it with water, dip it in your water bucket until you get the hang of it, and then you could start adding water to it. I think with student watercolors, it can give you too much water sometimes and can be difficult to control. So now I'm going to start working and building up some of the texture on our vehicle's surface here. And I'm just going to put out a few more fresh colors here, but I'm pretty much going to keep my palette pretty dirty because I'm just going to skip around to these different colors as I need them.
Munira Hakim, what was the first artwork you ever sold?
Oh, birdhouses. When I was like in junior high, I used to paint birdhouses, and then I would paint like portraits on these little masonite. There were these like little paneling samples, because my parents had a hardware store, and they would discontinue these old like they were like, you know, big like hardboard panels, kind of actually them. Ha, it is. Look at that. So it'd be these things. They're just like, you know, with the cheesy paneling, and so when they'd get discontinued, they'd give me the samples, and I would gesso them, and I would paint portraits on them and sell those. So that was all kind of like high school and junior high stuff.
There we go.
Do we have issues?
The video just paused for a second, but it picked back up. We're back on.
I'm using the tip of the brush here to add some rusty texture. This is yellow ochre on my brush.
We're at 392 viewers.
Wow, that is awesome.
We're almost at 400, 395. We're getting to 400.
Oh, wow, guys.
So exciting.
Awesome. Please.
And 171 likes.
Wow, cool. Yes, please drop a like if you are enjoying this tutorial. That really helps out, especially if you're on Twitter, because I think it posts your likes over on Twitter, and then other people can come over and join in on the fun.
Twitter.
Tweet.
I'm not on Twitter. Sorry, I can't help you there.
That's all right. I don't think
I'm not even on Facebook, so.
I know, and I'm always bummed out because I'm like, oh, I'm going to add Sarah to this conversation, and she's not there.
I'm not.
And I add John to the conversation. He's like, why are all these women talking about craft products at me?
And then he still wouldn't tell me. He'd forget about it. Anita Marion, do you ever try to rip off a watercolor pencil to create rust? Try burnt sienna on a wet area. Oh, rub off a watercolor pencil? Maybe is what she meant.
Oh, I suppose you could. Yeah, catch the texture of it. I probably would do that as a last thing, because once you brush over that with water, it's gonna take away that effect a bit. So if yeah, you could do that. You could do that with a regular colored pencil at the end of a painting to give you a little bit more texture if you want. Try using dabbing strokes as you do this, because it's going to give you that kind of rougher look. Another thing you can do is dry brush. And so what you're going to want to do is blot the excess water off of your brush. You just want the paint without the excess water, and you just kind of use the edge of your brush. And you kind of just drag it across, and it's going to catch a texture. It's good to practice this with a lighter color like yellow ochre, because if it ends up being too wet and you drag it across and it gives you a wash, it's not so dark that you can't go over it or fix it some other way. But that's a really nice way to do some texture. Then once you get the hang of it, you could try it with like a burnt sienna, and you can do that with a flat or an angled brush. This is a Majestic. This is one of those brushes with an angled edge, so if you want to scrape things, it's really handy for that. You can do some with some burnt sienna. You need enough water so that you can pick the paint off the pans, but you want your brush to be so dry that it kind of wants to, the bristles kind of want to tend to split apart on their own. And I think I'll do this over here where I could use a little shadow. And it just skips a little bit, so it gives you a texture. And that can also help you get straight lines too if you're not so steady-handed, using the chisel edge of a brush, because it's already got a little bit of a straight line happening anyway. And once you get more confident with that, you can go ahead and have a mix with a lot more blue on it and get some kind of drippy, rusty streaks. Build up that texture wherever you feel like it needs a little bit more. Just try not to add too much water on your brush so that you can get that nice dry brush effect. Another thing you can do with an angular brush or a flat brush, but an angular is a little bit easier, is you can do you can put color on just the tip of the brush, and you can do a kind of a controlled shadow. Right along there, we have a little bit more of that red paint showing. You turn your brush and turn your paper so it's a little more comfortable to approach. So we're pretty much adding just tiny amounts of paint at this point. Just pretty much have my paint concentrated on the tip. I'm putting in my brighter colors. The paint maybe hasn't worn completely away yet. Any questions from anybody in YouTube land?
A few, but the mods have hopped right on them, so.
What, have we had any trolls yet? I mean, with all these people, you'd think that.
I think Val nailed one, but that's all I've seen so far.
That's good. You know, it's Friday the 13th, too. I thought for sure we'd have. I'm just determined to jinx something here today.
You are. Just take the smooth easiness that's coming.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, huh? All right, now I want to get some of my darker values in here. Oops, we're crooked there. And I'm going to go back to my number 8 round because it has a really nice point on it. If your brush doesn't have a great point, then go ahead and grab something a little smaller. We want a nice dark color. I'm going to mix my darkest dark, which will end up being the Cad Red and Ultramarine Blue mix again. It's just a little bit darker and more transparent than the Burnt Sienna and, well, maybe it's not more transparent. Burnt Sienna can be fairly transparent. It just seems a little like it's a little bit stronger, I guess.
KK Burns, how much was the palette you are using now?
This one was on sale for oh, I'll show you here. $114. I think Jerry's usually has it for $119. And I think the regular price is $3 something, but Jerry's has good prices in Lucas products in the United States. So I did check on Amazon, it's like $179, so it's definitely worth checking out Jerry's if you've never shopped there before. And the paints are pretty slow wearing. I've got a couple little dents in some of the colors that I've used a lot, but not much. So I'm going through and adding any of my darkest shadows that are on the red. And when I want better detail, I could tip my brush up at a 90-degree angle with the paper. I'm not going to do that too much, but if you are having issues with not being able to get your brush, your lines sharp enough on your brush, go ahead and try that. There's also some like really big patches of like, I don't know if the paint on this was like, this truck was painted a couple times or what, because there's like this dark here does not look like it could be rust. It looks more just like paint that's chipped away. So I'm going ahead and just putting this kind of like mottled pattern in here. If you're wondering if an area of your painting is dry or not, put the back of your hand down and you can feel if it's cool. It's not dry yet. Don't paint on top of it. Make sure it's completely dry so that way you have nice crisp lines. If you go on top of a damp area of your painting, it's going to give you some fuzzy edges, which could give you an effect that you want. But for this, we're kind of controlling our pigment, so we don't really need that.
Cassandra Gilbert, is it better to make puddles of color before painting?
If you need big washes, I would, but if you know you're going to have to like work on one area and you don't have time to stop and make more because you're working on a wash and your paint could dry as you're working and ruin the effect, then you'll want to mix it up ahead of time. It's like if you're doing a controlled wash, basically. Or I did, because I wanted you to be able to see the colors and I didn't want to have to zoom out so that the whole thing was in view, because then you would lose the detail on the image here that I'm painting. So it kind of just depends. If I'm just like picking a little color here and there, I don't bother. If you're worried you might forget what colors you're using, or you need a lot for a big wash, then yeah, go ahead and do that beforehand. We're going to be scrubbing some color away too to give us the kind of worn vintage look too. So it's kind of an abstract, additive and subtractive type of technique. Got any big plans this weekend, Sarah?
Well, I have a date with some ladies tonight at a friend's house. John is going to drop me off and pick me up so I can have a few cocktails and not have to worry about driving home.
Good, that's smart.
Have some snacks and a few drinks and play some games. And yeah, that's all I got planned so far.
Oh, nice.
I know, I was like, John, would you be willing? Because she lives right in Holden. She doesn't live very far away. It's like a 15-minute drive. Yeah. Like, would you mind dropping me off and picking me up so I could have a few drinks? And he's like, no, that's fine. Because I don't really ever do that. But she and her longtime boyfriend, he just broke up with her like a month ago.
Oh.
So she's starting to get back on the wagon a little bit and trying to stay social and busy. So she invited some of her lady friends over to have a ladies' night.
Oh, nice. That ought to be fun.
Yeah. Angela Starr, how do you choose which brand of paint you will use per subject matter when you are not doing a review for us?
Well, it may have to do with what colors are in the palette. And like there might be something where I was like, oh, I know that I had a lot of granulating colors in here that were going to give me that nice rich texture that I want. So it was a really good palette to choose versus like my Mission Gold, where the colors are super transparent and vivid, which it would be more difficult to achieve a more old weathered look. So I mean that's one thing. And then sometimes it's just like, well, if I'm painting outside and I'm taking my paint somewhere, I want a smaller palette just because I don't know where I'm going to end up setting up, and I find larger palettes a little difficult to handle out in the world. So that would affect my choice. Because I don't have the same colors in every palette. I have different palettes set up. I have palettes set up more if I'm going to a life sketching class, because I know I'm going to be doing skin tones versus a landscape palette setup. Basically, so I use my stuff because you really don't need this many palettes or anything. It's a little excessive, quite frankly. Feel free to go and adjust any colors you see are too dull while you're going around. Now I've got to do something here for my texture, but I think that there's like a grill in the front here, but it's almost like a mesh, and I don't want to paint every little piece of that mesh. So I'm going to see if I can use a special effects brush. This is a rake. And if you look at the ends of the bristles, you can see that they're kind of, they're separate. Like you see gaps. I'm just trying to, let's see, maybe if I hold it over my painting, you can see it's got to be someplace where there's some contrast. There's like, oh, you can see there, I think there's like spaces in between the bristles there. So I'm going to see if this will work for giving me that grill illusion. So when you load this up, you don't want to load up too much paint. And I'm just going for dark mud here. Okay, so there you can see it really strongly how they're separated. And I am just going to try to give the illusion of the grill here. Oh yeah, that's going to work pretty well. Our brains are going to fill in what we don't paint. So don't feel like you have to have every little section covered. As long as you get some of those crosshairs in there, I think you'll be fine. And do the same thing over on the other side. I like how the paint's actually not beating up on this palette. I was afraid that would have that issue. But then I actually washed it with dish soap because I had got some staining colors on there. And that just washing it with just regular dish soap pretty much made it so that my paints don't stick. I mean, the paints do stick. They don't beat up.
Probably what if there was like any sort of film, probably the dish soap dissolved it.
Yeah, I see a lot of people complaining about their palettes beating up, and I bet if they just washed whatever factory release was on there, just washed them with some soap, it would take it away. Or even like a little bit of a kind of scrubby sponge or something. All right, I am going to go to a liner brush just so that I can get some, so I don't have to reload my brush quite so often. That one is always hiding on me. There we go. And do you know why it's called a liner brush, Sarah?
I do not know why it's called a liner brush, Lindsay. Please tell me, why is it called a liner brush?
Because it has long bristles, so it can hold a lot of water and pigment, and it can make long lines.
Oh.
It's also called a rigger. Because you could use it to paint.
Rigger. I like that better than liner.
Yeah, actually you make the riggings on masks. Seascape painters would use it to paint the riggings. And we're going to go get any kind of thin shadows and thin creases here that we might have missed.
Okay, I have a small complaint.
Okay.
So a friend of mine gave me a lovely watercolor painting for Christmas of a draft that she did. 9x12 watercolor paper, standard size you buy. Do you think I can find a freaking 9x12 frame anywhere that isn't black or brown?
Oh,
in this area,
it is kind of it's not what you find for your normals. Yeah,
and I'm in a craft store where they sell the art supplies, but no 9x12 frame. So, I mean, it's not. But now I'm like, now I have to go online and try and find something that matches because I want to frame it, obviously, because it's a nice little piece she did for me for a present. Telling you what, stores, you're gonna sell the art supplies and the paper. You got to sell the frames to fit it. And one of the few options that wasn't black or brown, it was like a 16x20 frame with a 9x12 mat. I'm like, I don't want it in a 16x20 frame. I just want a nice 9x12, 12x9 frame to fit the piece.
You probably should mat it though.
Well, no, I mean with a little matting, so maybe like the next size up. Like I don't need, because it's going.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Dominique can also never find 9x12 frames. Why do they make the paper that size if you can't find frames? Don't these, who's screwing this up? We need to talk to them.
I don't know, but our fine sponsor, Jerry's Autorama, carries a variety of 9x12 frames for your convenience.
Well, I guess I'm going to be going on Jerry's Autorama and telling them that I'm ordering this because they're the only ones I can find that isn't black or brown. Because there's no black or real brown, because she did it kind of whimsical.
Yep. Right. What color were you looking for?
Well, I'm not necessarily against a brown, but it was like a really dark, like this table brown.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very kind of modern, whimsical picture, and it would not have looked good at all. I was not impressed at all. I mean, not a major problem, but I just had to complain for a minute.
That's fine.
You and everybody in the chat room would understand.
Yes. I just lifted away some of that color on the back of the little headlight because it had gotten too dark. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go through and scrub away any other highlights or worn areas that just don't look worn enough. This is a Maxine's mop, and I had a lot of people ask me about this last time I used it. It is by Lowell Cornell, number 270, Maxine's mop, 1/4 inch. I have had this for years, so I do not know if it's still available. I would think it would be because it's a decorative painting brush. So if you don't see it with your fine art brushes, you might need to search decorative painting, because it is a decorative painting brush. And I will tell you something, decorative painting brushes are usually pretty darn good, because some of the techniques that they have to do for toll painting are very precision oriented. So, and a lot of the brushes that are for acrylic, decorative painting in acrylics, are good for watercolors, because the paint they use for decorative painting in acrylics is more of a flow craft paint. And so it's a lighter body, so the brushes will work nicely for watercolors. Like this mop is not so stiff that it damages my paper. It's just like, it's just perfect. It doesn't scrub too much. It doesn't scrub too little. I never worry about ruining my paper with it. Probably stole it from my mother, actually. It was probably one of her brushes. I don't remember. I don't know where this brush came from, to tell you the truth, but I'm thinking, you know, it's probably Mom's. It probably got mixed up with some of my stuff.
Well, she hasn't noticed it, so.
Yeah. Well, I know I got a lot of my brushes from her when I borrowed some brushes once, and I didn't care for them very well when I was a teenager. And so she goes, okay, these are your brushes. And she bought herself all new brushes, and she just gave me hers. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, instead of getting ugly at your kid for ruining your brushes.
Let her keep the junky ones.
Yeah, treat yourself to some new ones. I think I'm going to do that with my car when my kids start driving. They can have the van. I'm going to go get a convertible.
That's not a bad idea. Get a motorcycle.
Ooh, I don't know.
Then they can't even drive, because if you get the convertible, then they'll just want to drive that with their friends. Whereas if you have the motorcycle, you got to get the special license and everything.
That's true.
Tammy T, do you still have your booth in the antique mall?
I do. Yes, I do. I need to get over there and update it. I've got a bunch of stuff that needs to get there. I'm very bad at going from the creating the piece to actually getting it ready to sell. That's where I tend to lose my mojo. It's like the fun part's done. Oh, yeah. I gotta mat this and put a price tag on it. Then there's a whole psychological, you know, what do I price it?
Yes, I don't know if I told you, but when Dad and I went to the big craft fair at the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor.
Yeah, no, I don't think you told me anything.
Dad and I were at a booth, and this one lady, she had these really great handbags, but like different sizes, like big ones and like the small ones that go around you, you know, the sling ones. Yeah. And they were all reversible. Pockets, zippers, beautiful fabrics, really quality, really nice. So like, you know, she had deals. You get 2 of the smaller ones for $50, 2 of the larger ones for $75.
Yeah, well, that's not bad.
Really, I mean, and so I was looking in the booth for, you know, because it was Christmas shopping, and I found a lot of stuff I wanted, but I didn't buy anything. You know, talked to the lady for a minute. It's beautiful stuff, you know, really nice. And a couple booths down, these 2 ladies that were behind us, they were like, did you see the prices on that lady's bags? I could not believe that she would charge that much. I was like, I wanted to turn around and be like, oh, I understand how much, because they were just really good quality, like quality fabric, quality sewing, like you could use it and it's not going to fall apart next year. Yeah. And they were reversible, so like you could turn them inside out based on whatever fabric she had inside. Right. I was like, you don't do anything crafty.
Right. Well, people just they're just look at the materials that it would cost to make it. It's like, but you're not looking at the 20 hours of labor that went into that. I had somebody that quilts had said to me, like, why they were selling baby quilts for $75. I couldn't believe it. It's like, well,
that's probably what they got in supplies with $20 that goes in their pocket.
Yeah. And I said, well, how long do you think it took her to make that? Well, I could have made that in a weekend. I go, so a weekend, like 2 full days, 16 hours. You know, so 16 hours. How much would you expect to make?
$75?
Yeah. And that's not counting materials. Oh, well, I think she got the materials at Martin's. It's like, so what? She spent all weekend making it then.
Right. Yeah. But then for a lot of them, you have to buy the batting, which is stuff that goes in between. And that stuff is not inexpensive. Mm-hmm. And even if you do get it at Martin's, you still have to buy multiple yards to do the backing.
Right. Right. It's almost like a lot of times it's almost like I'd rather give away something I made versus selling it for, you know, for so far under what it's worth.
Elizabeth Jensen, I have 2 paints that say they are the same pigment, PV19, but they look very different.
Yes, depending on how a pigment is milled, it can look completely different. I learned that from the Spin Doctor. He has a great channel on...
he hasn't been around lately.
No, he hasn't. I think he might have got a different schedule or something. But yeah, he's still around on YouTube land. Yeah, PV19 can give you anything from a vivid crimson red all the way to a purple, like in pinks.
Really?
Yeah, it can. It's a very versatile pigment, depending on its concentration, and I think the pigment size they mill it to. So it's a really, really cool one. I need to take a break on the vehicle. I'm going to work on some of the grass. I grab my olive green. I also really like Sennelier's olive green. It's such a clean, bright earthy green. I ordered a tube of that from Jerry's. It was like $8 for a big tube. They have a good price on Sennelier paints, and I do think they're better quality than the Turners and Lucas. If you do want to try some different artist quality paints, that's the nice thing about Jerry's is I don't have to. I can talk about all different paints because they sell them all. Even if they're sponsoring, I don't have to be like, well, I better not talk about this paint.
Right.
They sell every brand, doesn't matter.
Right.
But yeah, I really love that particular color from Sennelier. Was so pretty. I grabbed a big tube of it because I had it in the student line. The student line was so pretty. I'm like, I'm gonna get a tube of this in the artists. This is very abstract. I like to paint it in with the olive and then drip the ultramarine into the wet wash because then it's going to give us the really interesting granulation.
Rebecca Beal, what palette do you recommend for Turner watercolors?
Like a palette to put them into. It really doesn't matter. I really like the John Pike palette because it's a thicker plastic and it's about the same price as some of the thinner ones. I think it's about $20. But I have a Pike palette downstairs that goes in my travel teaching box, and I got it secondhand and it's still going strong. It's probably 30 years old or more. So I really like that. The one I usually have my Turners, in for like my YouTube videos is the Zoltan Szabo palette. I like that because I can keep everything on camera while I'm working, but really that's the only reason I use that palette, because I can have it all on screen. It wouldn't be the one I necessarily recommend or would use if I was not filming, just because I'd rather have a big mixing area with all my wells around the outside. But it's such a personal thing. I would just do, whatever appeals to you. Think about where you work, how much table space you have, and get a palette that's going to fit comfortably.
Gina Shepard, how do you price your work?
Poorly. Quite frankly, I'm horrible at that. It's like the most unpleasant.
Yeah, it is. The few times I've done some craft fairs, like, how do you price this stuff? It's ugh.
Yeah, it's because people say go by size, charge this much for this much, but it's like, well, if I just did a 25-minute painting, I'm not going to charge the same as if I did a 4-hour painting.
Jerry Finley, I struggle with watercolor backgrounds. They look so forced and unnatural. Any suggestions?
Try working wet into wet, because you can't really force much that way. You have to kind of you have to go with the flow because your paint is going to go where it wants to go.
And we've had multiple requests for splatters, or asking if you're going to
Oh,
splatter.
I hadn't even considered splatters for this, but maybe I've got some rocks to do, so I might do some splatters.
And it is an old rusty truck.
Yeah.
There's going to be splatters from nature on it.
That's right, dirt splatters.
Dirt splatters, bird splatters, leaf
gosh.
splatters.
Yeah, bird splatters.
Earth splatters on the bottom from when it rains really hard and splashes up mud.
Oh, yeah, because it looks like that truck's been washed too much recently. Nice thing about having some green here. This is another reason we're not getting a real muddy look, is because I've got this green, and the green and red are opposite. So they're next to each other. Mixed together, they'll make mud, but put next to each other, they'll actually make each other stand out a little bit more. Don't be afraid to move your brush, twist it, use it in different, you're not going to hurt it, unless you just jam your brush down or your paper down to the metal part. That will hurt it. But you can really manipulate the brush and get some interesting effects. Still using those same 5 colors. We haven't added anything other than what I told you at the beginning of the video. Little blue with a touch of burnt sienna in there for some more shadows kind of in the foliage back here. I'm keeping it very vague.
Sue Anderson, how do you pronounce Lindsay's last name?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's Weirich.
Yes. People are like, how do you spell that? It's German, just in case anybody cares. Why, Rick? Why, Rick? Why, Rick? Sorry.
Fun to say, isn't it?
Maybe I need to take a nap on my sweet, sweet new bed.
Oh, probably. Friday the 13th nap.
Well,
Long weekend nap.
I've resisted taking a nap at all in the new bed. I've only been going to bed at night.
Yeah, I'm not a napper. Even if I try to nap, I can't fall asleep unless I'm sick. I might be able to fall asleep if I'm sick, but
I'm a napper, or I would be if I let myself nap.
got a little yellow ochre in that background. I feel like I need to warm it up and brighten it a little bit here and there. A little bit through the window. Give it a nice summery look.
Deborah Sullivan, are plastic or metallic palettes best for watercolor?
It doesn't matter.
I have plastic, but it stains badly. The only way I can remove the stains is to use SOS pads, which I would think would be bad because it would scratch up.
And then it makes it stain more.
Plastic.
Well, not all plastics are going to stain so much. Some of the plastics will turn yellow, a little bit yellow eventually. That's what happened to my Pike palette. I really don't find the staining to be an issue when I'm mixing. It doesn't bother me. So I don't know. Even your metal palettes can stain. I think that, I don't know. I guess it's not a real big issue for me. So it doesn't. So I mean, I just use whatever. Plastic palettes, if you're going to go big, are going to be a lot lighter than like an enameled. Some people use a butcher tray. A lot of people like a butcher tray, which is an enameled metal pan. You wouldn't want to have that for travel because it's so darn heavy and there's no place to really. You can leave your paints out on it, but it's not. I don't think it's as nice as having the wells where your paints can live and then you can just dip from them. You kind of have to have it all out in your mixing area, and it's not my favorite. It's I think Steve from the Mind of Watercolor does it that way. He doesn't use plastic palettes anymore, I don't think, but he used to. I think everybody has their own opinion on that. I like plastic because it's lightweight and I can have a nice big mixing area without adding to the weight of it. But it's complete personal preference. I'm spattering on some of the colors I've used to give me a pebbly texture in the ground. I'm using just a stiff oil painter brush. I actually just grabbed this from my oil paint bucket. And if you get too much, just kind of gently blot it. Or if you want to add texture and a wash that's still wet, you can blot it. This might be kind of cool to go over with some like pastel pencil too, or pastels.
Oh yeah.
Ask the chat if they want to see any. Do you guys want me to go with any pastels on top?
Pastels on top.
I think it would be kind of cool.
I'm sensing the answer is going to be yes.
Well, I'll dry it. We'll collect the data as I dry this.
Data.
If not, we can finish it in watercolors. It's either way, it'll be fun.
And that's what today is all about. Yes, pastels. Sure, do it. Yes, go for it. Yes, pastels. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And the nice thing, I'm going to use cheap pastels, student grade pastels you can buy for like $14 a package or less. So I think they have the Charbon ones over at Jerry's for like $5 and $10 a set. So you don't need to have anything expensive. You could use pastel pencils. You do want your paper to be dry, though, before you attempt it. So make sure you do that. Okay, let me grab my pastels. I'm just going to grab this little, can't take the lid off because I went through this phase. I guess I used to loan a lot of things out because I put like my address labels on everything. And every once in a while I'll grab something and I'll use it. Then I'll in a video and I'm like, oh, I've got to reshoot the whole video because my address is right there. I don't need any, cyber stalkers. I once bought a set of stamps secondhand, like at a yard sale or something.
Ooh.
And I didn't realize it, but I had my camera at a different angle, and it's leaving a shadow. And I'm like shooting this video, I'm doing this this project, and the entire time there's somebody stamping up like phone number, name and phone number on the side of the thing. I'm like, well, I don't even know this person. I can't leave this. So I had to like blur it, like, you know, when they blur somebody's face, like on a on like cops or something. So
like you're a criminal.
I know. But it's like, I don't have time to reshoot this. I don't have the supplies to do the project again. This is kind of like a yellow ochre color pastel. Yeah, I was like, oh, I am always checking. I'm going to take the label off of anything that I bring in for my yard sale. Because I'd used it to store beads in it, so I didn't even think about it. Because I had used Stampin' Up! Cakes to put beads in. You can use the edges of the pastel to give you kind of an all-over textured kind of swash of color. You can use it on its side that way if you want that technique, but you want it a little bit smaller. I recommend, though, if you're going to do a color somewhere, just find a couple other places to put it so you're not ending up with this weird, you know, a weird isolated color. You have it kind of happening here and there.
We had somebody ask you what pastels they were.
These are SMI. They're gosh, what did I do with the lid with my
your table is very, very full.
Okay, it was on the outer sleeve. This SMI, I don't know what it stands for, but I've actually, for my classes, I bought their big full stick set of 48. This is the half stick assorted size. Faber-Castell also has a nice half stick soft pastel set. Charvin will work too. Jerry's has that. They're a little bit harder, but they're still soft enough for this. Sargent also makes a nice, it's a student quality. The thing I like about using the student quality pastels is that I'm not so worried because I don't have a dust collection system. I don't have the stuff to deal with the pastel dust. So I know I'm not as careful as I should be to use pastels. So I don't have to worry about the chemicals in these because they're safe for children. They're not going to have cadmium. I'm not going to have cadmium dust floating around.
Heidi Jones, can you use a regular blow dryer to dry your paper paint?
Yes, you can.
But you said before with acrylics.
Acrylics do not use a heat gun. Definitely use a hairdryer if you're using acrylics. You do not want to use the heat gun.
Bev Roberts, could you use oil pastels on top of this painting or would they not work well together?
You can use oil pastels on top. The only thing I would caution is that I don't know if the oil pastels would disintegrate your watercolor paper if it was unprotected, like oil paints would. So, you know, just kind of be cautious in that way. They probably won't. Probably only if you put solvent in it would they do that, if you're blending them with solvent. I probably will be adding some white, but I'm not going to do that until the very end because white is just kind of like the icing on top. You don't want to overdo it. And it's easy to overdo it, so I can even go in and darken. I tend to want to highlight with pastels, but if you do realize that you kind of lost some darks, you can go in and darken. And you can blend out with your finger or a paintbrush if you get too much. I would try not to cover up all of your washes just so that you can see some of the pretty granulation in there if you do have some granulation. But you can really get like a punch of color with a pastel. You could even use a pastel pencil if it's if you're a little timid. Pastel pencils won't release quite so much medium, so you can go a little slower and not have to worry about too much. Just going to get my absolute darkest areas in here. And this will be classified as a mixed media now because that I've added more than watercolor. And you can remove the pastel with an eraser for the most part. So if you do go overboard, you have that option. And it shouldn't rub off too much of your pigment. Might a little bit, just because these are very granular colors that we used.
People are really enjoying the pastels on this.
Oh, good.
Great. It's adding that extra level of texture
Yeah.
you get with that rust.
It really shows off the texture of the paper too, I think. If you were doing this on a rough paper, it would even have more of a pronounced look to it. Yeah, and these are very inexpensive. I think I paid $14 for this set, if that. I mean, it was a while ago, years ago, so it might be more expensive, but I think they're still about the same price. Schminke makes a really nice pastel. Super soft. I use them for like my top layers. If I was doing a pastel painting, I would save them for the very end, because you want to work kind of hard to soft if you are doing a pastel painting, just because the harder layers won't stick on top of the softer layers. You can use like a piece of poster putty or rubber cement. If you get too much, you can press it down and lift it up, and that way it won't disturb anything else around there. It will just take up the excess.
Isa Lawton, does pastel dry like regular paint, or will pastel dry like regular paint?
It's a chalk. It's already dry. So, you know, just be careful when you store it. You can give a little spritz of fixative or hairspray if you're worried about it kind of smudging. I usually don't, though. I usually just maybe put a piece of deli paper or glassine to it, and leave it, you know, in my portfolio until I'm ready to frame it. And then if I frame it, I just mat it, and I put a little space between, a little strip that you can't see between the mat and the artwork, so that it will, if any dust does fall off, it'll fall off behind the mat, not dirty the edge of the mat. But that's minor. I mean, as long as you mat it, you shouldn't, your painting should be safe. It's just to kind of make it look, keep it looking nice if it gets bumped or something, and some stuff gets knocked loose.
Corey S., doesn't the chalk flake off?
Well, that's just what I was talking about. You can spray it with something. Spraying it will darken it. It's not a huge deal here because we're not using like really bright colors. You might need to reapply your light. Like if you do like a white highlight, you probably will need to reapply it after you spray it, and then just leave the white unsprayed. But yeah, you can do that. I usually don't worry about it too much. I don't like to use fixatives. So I only do if I absolutely have to, like if it's in a sketchbook and it's just making a mess of everything. I really try to avoid spraying anything on my art, and I try to use as little as adhesives as possible, because it seems like it's adhesives that end up being sprays and adhesives that end up deteriorating things. And I tell you the truth, haven't really noticed much of a difference between using hairspray and using fixative for the amount of time that I've used it. Just use the cheapest hairspray you can find, because you don't want all those extra oils that the more expensive ones have. You can blend a little bit if you need to, but the texture is kind of what we're after. I'm going to do some highlighting with some white. Actually, I had some. Oh, I cannot see that. Well, I think I have enough white here to do this. I'm going to just use a white pastel for some highlighting.
G. Alexander, have you ever used dry wax on your watercolor?
I have rubbed watercolor postcards with paraffin wax and heated them before mailing them, so they stay protected from moisture. I just bought some Dorland's wax medium to try, like maybe mounting some watercolors onto panels. Because I was thinking, I'm having it's expensive to frame watercolors. That's part of my issue with selling watercolors at the schoolhouse, is that they need to be protected, but they also need to be on display. So I was thinking about maybe doing that. Angela Farr has a tutorial on that, and it was very interesting, and I thought I might try that for some of my paintings down there, but I have not yet, so I can't comment on it because I haven't done it yet, but I own it. I own some Dorland's wax medium. I think I might want a little bit of like just a very, very, very faint blue. I don't really have any faint blue in here. This is the color of this, the ultramarine blue color. So I'm thinking maybe if I can add it on really, really light, I can just kind of blend it out a little bit, because I feel like I need some of that sky color reflected, and since I use so much blue in my mixes, I want to use that same blue pastel to kind of pick up some colors, but I have to be kind of gentle with it or it's going to look too blue. I could definitely see the blue sky, the blue like daylight bouncing off of some of this stuff. And it's just about done.
Yay!
Yeah. Just want to highlight some of the areas I know are accurate and true, and that way your brains will fill in the details. Maybe just throw a little bit of grass around the wheels.
Yes, you definitely want grass around the wheels. A Voltnik, how do you save pastel paintings?
I put them in just like a folder and or a portfolio, and just leave them there until I'm ready to do something with them, pretty much. Nothing too fancy, just to kind of keep them from getting dusty. I think I'll just give a little bit of a little more texture on the ground by using the edge of the pastel there. I kind of like doing the mixed media thing at the end of a painting, because it's like, well, let's just see what it does. You know, it's like I'm totally enabled by everybody watching.
That's good, though.
It either turns out really well or it's a teachable moment. That's what I figure, you know?
And both are good things.
Yeah, exactly. There, I think I'm going to call this done.
Walk away.
Yeah.
When in doubt, walk away.
Yep, exactly. I could always look at it and add more later, but I think for now, I'm pretty happy with that. What does everyone in the chat think? Does it look done to them?
People saying it's looking great. Those pastels really make it pop.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching today. Oh, Craftsy has a great sale on this weekend. Buy one, get one free. Ooh. So BOGO on your classes. I have the special discount link in the video description, so you can click on through there and do some shopping. That is an affiliate link. So if you buy a class, then not only do you get one free, but you also help support the Frugal Crafters YouTube channel, so I can keep making free tutorials for you, which is a win-win-win. Free class, free tutorials. Yeah.
Win.
Yes. And all the supplies I used are linked in the video description, except for these pastels. These are SMI. Sargent's also good and cheap. Faber-Castell has a studio line that I don't know if they call it studio, but it's a very almost an identical set to this. I think it has a sunflower on the package. It's like kind of like a dark blue color. Also good and inexpensive, and so are the Charbons. So any of those will be fine for this technique and affordable. So please support our sponsor, and you guys can save some money too. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week with another fun tutorial. Until then, happy crafting.